Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Today we are going to dive into the topic of being stuck and needing to let something go and not knowing how to do that. So let me explain. So, a lot of the times we have things going on, things that we're upset about, something that's happened that we need to move on from, but we have a really, really hard time moving on from it and letting it go. And, people around us might be kind of asking and wondering, like, why is this still bothering you? Why aren't you letting it go? It could be something that makes you mad. It could be something that you are recovering from, like a relationship. It could be a loss. It can be grief. It can be just, an old situation that's come up and is bothering you. Maybe something that hasn't bothered you for a long time and now it's bothering you again, or it could be a recent issue that you're just having a really, really hard time letting go of. And every time you think of it or have something related to it, it kind of brings up all those yucky feelings again. So it could really be a range of things. But what is common for a lot of people is that theme of just being stuck in something and not being able to move on from it. And it really can play out in lots of different ways for different people. But kind of the direction that I want to go with it is with kind of a couple things. So, one, really being able to first think for yourself, like, are there things in your life that you feel stuck in? A situation that has happened. And I'm not talking about like having a hard time moving forward with a goal or being stuck in a phase of life like that. I'm thinking more of like something that has happened and you've had a hard time moving on from it. So, are there things in your life that you are stuck in terms of a situation that has happened to you or something that you've gone through and you are having a hard time getting over it? A hard time letting go, moving on, not letting it bother you anymore. So just kind of think real quick, are there some things like that that apply to you? Honestly, most of us have something like that where we have just have this yucky attachment that we don't want to have, this kind of feeling of unresolved something. And so think of what that could be for you. And then I want you to think about, potentially why. Do you know why? Because a lot of people know, like, hey, I haven't gotten over this because it really, I haven't dealt with the things around it, or, I still have a lot of questions and I can't move on until I understand it. And until I understand it, it's just going to be something that I keep thinking about. And then there are some people who have these situations they're stuck in, or things that they've had happen that they're stuck in, they don't know why. They don't understand why it still bothers them, and they cannot figure out what is the cause of it to be able to even move forward. But I think in both situations, there are some similarities, whether we know it or not. A theme that I've found in a lot of the situations that I talk to people about, whether it's clients or people close to me, where there's this like stuck feeling, the theme seems to be having there's more to it, right? It's, when you have this specific situation you're looking at, it's kind of what you see above the surface, but typically below the surface there's a lot of other roots and issues that are impacting why we can't move on from these things. So basically, I kind of think of it as like, it's really hard to let go of this, because if I let go of this, I'm gonna have to maybe unravel a lot of things that are related to it. And they are things that I may not know are there, but like, I don't know specifically what they are, but I kind of know that there's just like, it's kind of a touchy thing for me every time I think of it. It just kind of makes me uncomfortable. So I don't want to even go there, because who knows what that is. Or it could be something that I'm like, I know if I open that, it's like Pandora's box. All this other stuff is going to come out and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just not even going to go there. But I think more often than not, it's that it's not really something we're aware of. Like, we might know kind of in the back of our minds that that's a touchy subject, but most of the time, I honestly think we live in this avoidance of things that are difficult, so we don't even go as far as figuring out why it would be difficult. So we just know that that has a lot of baggage attached to it, or a lot of hurt attached to it. So I'd rather just not touch it. And you know what? I'm just going to be upset about the fact that I can't get over this thing instead of looking at it and saying, okay, but I can't get over it because there is more to it. And that's just kind of the first obvious step, is at least acknowledge that there's more to it. Because let me give you an example. If you are going through, let's say, a situation with a breakup, and you have ended this relationship, or the other person ended this relationship with you, and here you are weeks or months later, and you're still really hung up on that person. You're still kind of missing them, thinking about them, maybe crying about it, just feeling the heartbreak that goes with that breakup. And if you are in that situation, then you might just be annoyed or frustrated with why you're not over it yet. Like, I don't understand why it still hurts. I don't understand why I can't just move on. Don't understand why I can't forget about this person. But most of the time, at least in my experience in working with people, there ends up being something that was not resolved, that's addressed, or that's attached to that situation, whether it's, again, open ended, not understanding why there was the breakup to begin with. Sometimes it's a lot of self esteem and self worth issues where your identity can really be kind of interlinked with that relationship. And so, letting go of it means having to really figure out how to be comfortable being alone. And if you don't do the work to figure out how to be comfortable with yourself, then you're just kind of this, you're floating around missing your other kind of completed half, And so you are trying to grieve and you're trying to move on, but really you're just stuck in the heartbreak part and not really identifying that there is something that I need to do to understand how to be okay and to take care of myself so that I am okay. A lot of people in this stage might just make kind of choices that help them move on, so to speak, maybe date a bunch of people or go do something drastically different to try to be distracted. But at the root of that, there is an issue that has not been addressed yet. There is some kind of attachment within ourselves that we have not dealt with, but we don't always know that we need to do that. And so, talking to a therapist sometimes is where a therapist will pull that out and help you clean it up and recognize, like, there's more to this than just, I can't get over my ex. And then, with that comes a lot of other negative emotions, like feeling guilt or the sadness or the regret or whatever. And so being able to really address those things also help you move forward. And so to kind of go back to the initial part of that example, feeling frustrated with not being able to move on from something is a very, very common feeling, because again, instead of taking the time or knowing that you need to do the work to resolve some of the other aspects of it, you just get stuck in the yucky, like, I cannot believe I can't get over it. I'm so frustrated with myself. This is so annoying. Some people will go as far as feeling like they're just, weak because they can't let go of these hurt feelings. And then that spirals into its own issue where now you're beating yourself up and you don't even understand why. You're just mad at yourself because you should be stronger and you should be able to let go of something or whatever. So it turns into another issue. And so, you can apply that same thing with grief. If someone has died, whether it's a person, a pet, whatever, and you find that you are stuck and not able to move past it, like beyond what seems to be typical grieving. Like, obviously everyone grieves in a different way and takes different lengths of time to grieve. But, sometimes we know ourselves and we know, like, I've never felt this, like maybe I've lost someone before but this just seems different. I can't seem to deal with this as well, and there's something going on. And again, typically there is a lack of self-awareness and we don't recognize that there is another attachment. Maybe there's guilt revolving around the relationship with the person that died, maybe guilt about the last things that were done or said with that person. Maybe it can be a historical thing. Maybe if it's a parent that you've lost, you are struggling now with an issue from your childhood or your young adulthood, or just, unresolved issues in the relationship, or just things that you feel that have come up relating to this person that you've lost that you didn't know you needed to deal with, that while they were here, maybe you had good boundaries or you just had a kind of relationship that was good or bad, but it was just expected. You just dealt with it. And now that this person's gone, you have this kind of wave of emotions that comes up that you didn't know you felt. You didn't anticipate this. And the shock or the just kind of the confusion of it can really leave you stuck because you don't know how to heal from something that you don't fully understand or that you weren't expecting to deal with, and that other person isn't here anymore for you to try to resolve it with them. And so it can kind of just leave you again feeling stuck. And people in that position sometimes just get really, really fixated on how upset they are that they can't move forward. And that's where they spend a lot of their time just, upset about that and not knowing that, okay, well, we need to dive in. But here's the problem with diving in. Here's why a lot of people don't do it. If we do dive in, that is going to potentially bring up so many things that we just don't want to deal with. Either we're not ready, or we don't know how, or we just live blissfully in ignorance or avoidance, and we sweep those things under the rug pretty regularly throughout our lives. That now, if I want to deal with this one thing relating to this one person, well, there's a possibility that all these other things relating to this person are going to come up, and they're things that I don't want to deal with. They're maybe bad memories or experiences or just things about me that now I have to confront, maybe some resentment or hurt or anger, and I don't want to bring that up, because if you bring those things up, you can't put them back away, right? So if you let it out, you can't just tuck it back in. It's out. That's it, and that's why a lot of people live life in a state of avoidance, and they do tend to kind of sweep certain things under the rug because there's never a comfortable time to deal with it, because it's a lot of work. But that is kind of where you get to a crossroads of you have to do something. You have to deal with it. And so if you have something that you can recognize you are stuck in, a situation that has happened, a loss that you've experienced, a change that you've had a hard time adjusting to or transitioning into, then I'm going to give you that kind of not so fun news that there's no way to deal with it but to go through it. And it can be something that's a day old. It could be something that's 20 years old or 40 years old. If you know on some level you have something that you have buried or swept under the rug, then most likely it is impacting your life in some way. It could be regularly, or it could be, once a year. But either way, when it comes up, it's going to affect your life. And I don't have to convince you of that. You know that. If you have something that you know you have not gotten over, then you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, that these things come up and they create a reaction of some sort in us. And they could be things that we move on from fast and we sweep them back under the rug quickly. Or they can be things that come up and it's just that time of year where now I'm going through this, there's this anniversary of someone that passed away, or it's the holidays, and whenever this thing happens, I'm just sad or really, really isolated. I isolate myself, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, or whatever. And it just takes up this chunk of my life that I just go through once a year, or for example. But I'm here to tell you that that's not something that you should continue to live with. I would like you to take on that challenge of dealing with it, knowing that when we deal with hard things, it gets harder before it gets easier, always. Anytime you want to learn a new skill or do something you've never done before, you're going to have to put in a lot of work, a lot of practice, a lot of effort, and a lot of repetition. And if you do it over and over and over and over, then it starts to get easier. But it will never start off easy. Nothing ever does. Excuse me. So the same thing applies to dealing with things that we have avoided. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink real quick. Okay. So everything that we have to heal from or grow from or deal with has to come with effort and has to come with potential difficulty to overcome. So, since you know me and my whole thing is like live a better life and live the life you want to live and have fulfillment and purpose and all of these things, then that comes with the territory that like we have to work at things to get better. And if you know that you have something that you avoid, you're the only one that can deal with that. You're the only one that can face that. There are going to be other people in your life that maybe wish you would finally deal with it and that you'd finally get over it and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, you're the only one that has control over that. But you have to be ready to put in the work. And I mean, you can even look at this in kind of everyday stuff like in relationships where there are a lot of couples that are in relationships, whether they're married or not, that have things that have happened in the past that they didn't deal with right. Maybe at first it created this explosion, but then things settled, everyone moved on, they didn't want to deal with how awful it was, and then one day led to the next, and before you know it, it's in the past, and everyone just kind of settles into the routine. But that thing still exists, and there are certain things that we see, like people in those situations have certain reminders that when those things happen, it's like, I don't know, it just brings it all back up. And so, if you have this in your relationship, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've never experienced this, you won't be able to relate to it. But so many couples that I work with have these things in their past. Some of them can be recent, but lots of this stuff ends up being older. And when I sit down with a couple to work on whatever's going on that brings them to counseling, I dig into like, well, how have things been throughout your marriage? And we go into detail of different things. And usually those things come up where there was this thing that either took place before they ever got married, but it wasn't dealt with and now it's coming up later, or it happened a while back and they just swept it under the rug, or just time went on and they've moved on from it, but really it still presents a big inner issue for one or both of the people in the relationship. And so that's an example of, where someone can look at that, whether it's the other person that's not over it or that is over it, is like, why can't you get over this? Like, you keep bringing this up. This keeps being a problem. We're going to, I don't want to deal with this anymore. But really, it ends up being because there is some part of it that has not been addressed. And I mean, that's pretty often, that's across the board, that's how it happens. And now when I talk about addressing it, it could be a conversation that needs to be happening, or it could be major therapy that has to be done to address it. But usually there's a hurt or a problem that has not been resolved, and one person still feels upset or doesn't trust the other person, or is worried that this thing could happen again, or is just wounded in some way as a result of it. And but again, it's easier to just sweep it under the rug and live in harmony and not keep bringing it up, or not just pretend like it doesn't exist, because it's easier. But I'm just, that doesn't work, and if you've made it work so far, then you're probably not living the kind of life that you want to live. You are not experiencing that joy and fulfillment in your relationship. You've probably just settled into some kind of normal because it's just easier this way. But again, I'm here to challenge, right? Growth doesn't happen if you're not challenged. Please look at that and consider that, because this version of the life that you're living, being stuck in whatever it is that you're stuck in, whatever you have not let go of, you haven't let go of it for a reason. And addressing it is only something that you can do. Yeah, you're going to probably have to pull in that other person that's involved if that's an opportunity that you have. But that it's going to get harder before it gets easier. And the end result could be recognizing that this isn't a relationship you need to be in, because the damage that has been done is so extreme that you cannot actually live with it anymore. And that's really, really unfortunate, but that's just a consequence of choices that have happened at some point, and you just have to live with that. Now, in the situations where there is no other person to resolve it with, like in the example of someone who passed away, it's a little different. You probably need a little bit more support through maybe counseling, therapy, or something like that. But I'm just not the kind of person that is in support of sweeping things under the rug because it always comes back up. And the sooner you deal with it, the easier it is to deal with it. The longer you put it off, the bigger the hurt and trauma around it becomes. And then it's just like the scar tissue that you just can't get through. Some people can, absolutely, with the right support and the right process, can absolutely get better. But it's not easy. So if you know it's not going to be easy, but you know at the end of it will come clarity or resolution of some sort, then it's worth it. Now, for some people, again, they choose to stay in that situation and just accept that life isn't really going to be better than this. And that's, of course, a choice that many people can have made and will make, and that's up to you. And there's no judgment there for me. I mean, we do what we do for a reason, right? But if you feel kind of driven or called or pulled or whatever you want to call it to have a better version of this life, to experience your relationship better, then you can't be scared to challenge the relationship. You can't be scared to challenge yourself, challenge that person. Ultimately, the other person has to make a decision if they're willing to participate and be challenged. But the healthy option is to walk through that storm together, figure out how to resolve it, and then come out on the other end with hopefully a better existence. But again, it means that you have to get uncomfortable before you can find that resolution. So, tying this all in, it's hard to let go of certain things because that usually means we have to upend a lot of things and pull at a thread that might unravel a lot of things. But unraveling knots is really, really good. It can be a tedious, really frustrating process. It can be painful. But at the end of the day, having that smoothed out, having that cleared up, that has such reward in it. Because not only do you hopefully get to a point of better life and resolution, but you also get this freedom from living with something that is just weighing you down constantly and just taking up so much space in your mind and in your heart. And it really, those things are preventing you from being the kind of person that you want to be and being in the kind of relationship that you want to be. So if you are ready to challenge yourself to lift that rug and just let it all out. Obviously, a therapist will help you do it piece by piece, and it won't all be at once. And even for you, you know what you can handle and what you can't. And if you can't handle this by yourself, then you need to get support. But, if you're ready to do the work, it's worth it. Again, anytime you do hard work, there's always the possibility that the end result is not what you expect it to be. So you might go in thinking, I'm going to challenge this with my partner and we're going to figure this out. And the end result may be that person's like, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. That would be a really, really hard reality. But I think I'd rather you know that and deal with that and figure out how to heal from that the right way than to be in a relationship where you're unhappy and stuck, right? But again, no judgment whatsoever if the choice is to stay in a situation that is comfortable, but maybe not the healthiest, but there is comfort in other circumstances, financial, children, all of that. You might have to make that decision for a certain period of time or forever. But I want you to know that if you are the kind of person that's at a place in your life where you don't want to stay in that and you are ready for change, then there's probably reasons, things that are holding you back up until this point that you need to look at, and you need to work through it and gain confidence and strength to be able to address that. If it's something that's already passed, it's not a relationship you're currently in, but it's a relationship you're trying to heal from or some situation you're trying to heal from, you are likely stuck because there are aspects of that you have not confronted and dealt with on a personal level. You need to do that work. You need to look at that and say, what is it about me that is stuck there? What is it about me that is less than because I'm not in that situation anymore? Why am I not happy with myself without that person? What is it that person did for me or allowed me to be that I feel like I can't be without them? you have to answer those questions. You have to deal with that. And sometimes um, I don't know, it brings up things that you didn't know you had to deal with. And so that's why it's really good to do this with a therapist, because then there's more safety in how to do it. But I'm one for challenge and improvement. So that's what I've got for you today. I hope this is something that will help you kind of think about where you are in things, and good luck if you decide that you want to work on that. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time. All right, bye bye.